hit record and then introduce you, Christopher. Great.
Thank you.
Jay Baba, dear friends, we're glad that we're so happy to have Christopher here with us this morning. We're glad that you joined us. And Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jay, Baba be with us. I have two sentences of an intro for Christopher, and then I'll turn it over to him. He teaches art history at George Washington University, and he and Charles live in Alexandria, Virginia. And I'm so grateful that he let me know these little bio facts today. So Christopher, I'll turn it over to you. I'm just so looking forward to this. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Betty and Ruthie, for the kind invitation. It's such a privilege for me to be able to talk about Jane. And while we were getting ready for this, I heard so many of you talk about precious memories that you have of her. So I know we have a lot of people here who know a lot of what I'm going to say and who had their own very close relationship with her, and others who might not have met her. So I hope that some of this will give you a little bit of a fragrance of who she was. And I have to tell you, it's been a very emotional morning for me. I woke up and I was looking over my notes again of what I was going to say, and the floodgates just opened. I was crying for like 2 hours just because it brought her so close. And of course, I think about her every day and feel her presence every day. But you know, rethinking these stories and things that Baba said to her just brings it all to life again. So thank you for having me. Betty, I'm going to share my screen now because I want to start, of course, with an image of Jane with Baba. So I think, yeah, here we go. Here. All right, now can you all see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and you can see me also?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, I wanted to start, of course, before I start talking about Jane, with her beloved Baba in 1958, when she first met him in Myrtle Beach. And here, a day on the beach, that's Jane with her head wrapped up in the scarf, looking down at Baba and smiling. She's so happy. So I first want to tell you about how I met Jane, and then about our particular connection through Saint Teresa of Avila, who was a frequent topic of conversation for us, and then just a few stories about her. So here's how it happened. I don't know how many of you know my Baba story, but before I met Jane and Charles, I had a teacher in high school in Columbia, South Carolina, whose name was Ben Slavic. Some of you might know him. He lives in Colorado. And Ben taught French at my school. It was an Episcopal school, and pretty conservative. And Ben, I was really drawn to because he was like this kind of oddball hippie at school. And so I wondered, who is this guy who wears vaguely Indian-looking clothes and has kind of longish hair? And he has his students meditate at the start of French class. And he just seemed so countercultural to what I was used to at Heathwood Hall Episcopal School that I was really drawn to his room. And we just felt an immediate connection, started having all kinds of talks. And when I was a senior, he gave me a Baba book. It was Jane Adriel's book, Avatar. But it really took a few more years for me to discover my own relationship with Baba. And so Ben and I stayed in touch while I was in college. I was at USC in Columbia. And he would come over to my house. I'd go over to his with his wife, Rita, and their 2 children. And I learned a lot about Mayor Baba through them. And, you know, Ben really emphasized, if you want to know more, you should go to the center in Myrtle Beach. And here's one of the ways he drew me to going to the center for the first time. He said, I know that you're really interested in Saint Teresa of Avila, you know, which I was, because I had read The Interior Castle, and felt very drawn to her. And he said, you know, if you really, you're interested in Mayor Baba, but also because of your interest in Saint Teresa, you have to go to Myrtle Beach, to the center, because there's this lady there who is like an aficionada of Saint Teresa. And of course, she's read all the books, and she's gone to Spain and visited all of Saint Teresa's convents. and you know, she would love to talk to you about Carmelite history. So I immediately thought, well, yes, of course I want to go for Baba first, but I want to meet this amazing lady whose name was Jane Haynes. And so Ben's wife Rita and I arranged a trip. It's about 3 hours drive from Columbia, South Carolina. And it was such an amazing day. It was May 21st, 1987. And an important part of the story is that May 21st is also the day Charles met Baba.
Oh,
Back in
my.
1958. Charles and I have a lot of synchronicity. I have to take a detour here about synchronicity and Charles. So,
Christopher, I wonder if you might show us you and stop the share, and then so we can see your face while you tell
yes,
the story,
yeah.
and then when you talk about Jane.
Hold on. Yeah. How do I do that? Let's see.
Oh, stop share. Just stop share and then start it again.
Okay. Oh, sure. Yeah. So this has nothing to do with the topic, but since I brought up Charles and I synchronicity, this is such a great story. So, you know, Charles went to Emory for his undergrad and his PhD in Atlanta. I went to Emory just for my freshman year. After Charles and I met, we started talking about our time at Emory, which was 17 years apart. And Charles wanted to know where I lived, what dorm did I live in? And I said, well, I lived in this dorm called Longstreet Hall. And he said, well, that's amazing. Like when I was a freshman at Emory, that's the same dorm I lived in. And he said, what floor did you live on? Well, I lived on the second floor. And Charles was like, well, I lived on the second floor also. Which room? The very last room on the left. And we realized Charles and I had the same dorm room, 17 years apart. It had 2 beds. Which bed did you sleep in, Christopher? The bed closest to the door. Now, how is that possible that we would have slept in the same bed? I mean, isn't that amazing? So that I associate that with the May 21st story, because my Baba anniversary, the day I had my experience of meeting Jane and having my own recognition of Baba, was also a May 21st. And so what happened, I was on the way to Myrtle Beach with Rita Slavic, and Rita said, you know, we should stop and buy roses for Jane. She loves flowers. And so we went, and I bought her one that was kind of orangish. And we arrived at Maher House. Before I even checked into the center and went to my cabin, we first went to Jane's house immediately. And she opened the door, and I gave her the rose. And she says, oh, it's the talisman rose. And she loved it. And I was immediately struck by Jane and by the atmosphere in her house. And those of you who went to Mayer House during those years know it kind of felt like a Spanish convent. Do you remember that? Because there was all this religious art, and some of the stuff I have behind me, like these big angel candlesticks, this was stuff that Jane had, and a big painting of St. Anthony on one wall of her living room, and these wrought iron gates that are from Spain from the 18th century. And so the whole thing had this kind of monastic vibe to it, which really resonated with me. And so I asked if I could sit on the sofa next to Jane, and you know, she was so gracious, and she said, of course, dear. And you know, and Jane was a master at visiting with people. And the one thing that she always said is that, you know, when someone came over to her studio, the first thing that she wanted to make happen is for them to do the talking, right? For them to give out before she started sharing, you know, to draw them out. So she asked me all kinds of questions about what I was studying in college and my interest in Teresa. And I remember one thing that she noticed was I had a watch. It was odd. I had a watch that had Jesus's face in the middle with the 12 apostles as each of the numbers. And Jane thought that was so interesting. And she said, you know, Mara gave me a clock with Baba's face on it. And so we connected over that. Wait, I'm going to share my screen again because I want to show you what she looked like at that time.
May I ask how old you were at that time?
I was 21.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so y'all can see my my screen now.
Yes.
Okay, wait, I want to do slideshow. Okay. So that's how Jane looked then. Oh, Jane was so beautiful. When you look at older pictures of her when she was in her 20s and 30s, she already looked like an actress, which is what she was. She ended up being on Broadway with Eartha Kitt in that play Jolly's Progress. But she just had such beautiful features, and then the blonde hair that turned kind of silvery and ashy later. But she always had this kind of elegance about her, like you see in this picture, was always very, very meticulous about her appearance. So I immediately just felt an immediate connection with Jane. We just clicked. And I remember one thing that happened when I was leaving the house. She was taking me around and showing me some photos that she had. And in one room, she had this picture she wanted me to see, and it's Jane as a baby.
Oh.
With her mother, Jane Dixon Berry in Durham, North Carolina. And she wanted me to see this. And then later I realized that when she passed away on April 11th, 1997, that this is how I would be positioned when she died. That she was laying in the bed in her studio, and I was there next to her face as she was passing away. And then Charles, of course, was there, and Wendy and Buzz. We were all there clustered around her bed. And I just want to show you one thing that brings in Jane's mother, because Wendy gave this to me for my birthday just a few weeks ago. And what it is, it's a gold locket that Jane said was the only thing she had kept of her mother's. And when you open it up, there's an image of the Sacred Heart, of Jesus's Sacred Heart inside. So Wendy has been so generous in sharing these precious things with me. I'm not going to tell my whole Baba story about me. I had my own recognition of Baba in the barn, and of Baba being a presence that had always been with me since childhood. But it was right after that meeting with Jane. And so I really felt like the meeting with Jane laid the groundwork, was the prelude for my own experience in the barn. But the thing I noticed about Jane right away, in addition to her amazing kindness and charisma, was that she had a kind of natural spiritual authority about her that she just had all the time. And I think what I connect with is a story that Jane tells about her time in 1958. So on the last day that Baba was at the center, by this time, Jane had these deep experiences of Baba and beautiful exchanges, which she talks about in her book, and her own experience of recognition of Baba. And what happened is, on the last day, Baba was seated outside the caretaker's cabin, listening to a recorded tape of the life of the Buddha, which Harold Rudd was narrating. And that's what you see here. Baba is listening to the tape. Anita Villard is holding the umbrella. And then over to Baba's right, here's Erich. And Baba turned very solemn during that playing of the tape. And while Jane was there listening to this, she started basically having an anxiety attack, because she was thinking to herself, the past several days with Baba have been so beautiful, and I know now who he is. Baba had told me that I'm an old friend of his, right? Reunited with him again now in this lifetime. But he's leaving tomorrow. Maybe this will be the last time I ever see him. Baba has said he's not coming back to the center again. And so this might be it. And what a loss. I've had this amazing experience of Baba, and now this might be it for me. And the way Jane put it was, my life had been unhappy in many ways until that moment. I felt unfulfilled. I felt like I was always on the spiritual search. There was a lot of anxiety and depression. And now it's all going to come back again. Now I'm going to go back into all that darkness because Baba's going to be gone while this Buddha tape is being played. And so while she's going through all that in her head, Baba is being carried back to the lagoon cabin. And of course, he was being carried in his chair because he was so injured from his two accidents. So he went to the lagoon cabin, and as soon as he went in, Jane heard Adi's voice calling, Jane, Baba wants you to come to lagoon cabin. And so, Jane was going through this whole kind of, anxiety about Baba leaving. She rushes to the lagoon cabin, and she kneels at Baba's feet, and Baba gives her a big embrace and tells her, with gestures, and Adi speaking for Baba, Jane, don't be nervous or afraid. I will always be with you physically. And Jane was stunned, and she said she was trying to take in those words. Don't be nervous or afraid. I'll always be with you physically, and repeating it interiorly, and then getting up, leaving, still hearing those words, and then looking at Baba one last time before leaving the cabin. And I really think, of all the things I've read that Baba has said to people, I think that is one of the most extraordinary. Because there are lots of times where Baba has said, I'll be with you always, my presence will be with you, but not, I will always be with you physically. And Jane, to Jane, that was really a key word. And I'll show you something. This is a copy, Jane's copy of Saint Teresa's book, The Interior Castle. And when she would read these books, she would annotate them heavily and underline passages that had special resonance for her, right in the margins. And so at the top here, she quotes what Baba has said: do not be troubled or afraid, for I will always be with you physically. Myrtle Beach, May 30th, 1958, Meher Baba. And when I've been going through her journals, her books, those words of Baba show up again and again. It was the most important thing he ever said to her. And I tell you all that because I feel like that's what I experienced around Jane, and I'm sure many of you did too, that there was a feeling about her that she carried Baba with her. And it was never about her. It was not about her asserting some kind of spiritual authority or certainly ever lording it above everyone. It was just natural. It was just who she was. And I felt it all the time. And it wasn't just when she was talking about Baba, but, if we would go out to, a restaurant in Myrtle Beach, like the rice planters, it just always seemed to me that kind of presence of Baba was there with her. If we were just like antique shopping or something really mundane, that just never went away. And she was always the person that I felt I connected with the most in terms of experiencing Meher Baba now. And I went to India, and of course Mera and Mani were unique. These were spiritual giants, but there was something about Jane where she always felt like my person. And we became very close, and and because of Charles, we had a lot of time together, and I hesitate to call Jane my mother-in-law, which she was, but that sounds so kind of cold and formal, because she always referred to Charles and me as her sons. Right? She always said that that I was her spiritual son, and treated Charles and me in that way. So what a blessing! I'm full of gratitude for that. So now the Saint Teresa part, which is such an important part of who Jane was. So the backdrop for this is, of course, that Baba had gone to Avila in 1933 with Narina and some of his male disciples. And we have a couple of things that Narina had collected in Avila while she was there with Baba. This postcard that shows a statue of Saint Teresa. This statue is kept in the house where Saint Teresa grew up. And then a postcard that Narina sent. This is a picture of the Cathedral of Avila. And notice what she wrote, Norina wrote at the bottom, Saint Teresa is the saint we visited. I think it's so interesting she put it that way, because of course Saint Teresa had died in 1582, but she puts as if she and Baba had visited Saint Teresa. But they did. They went to all these places associated with Teresa. And you all probably know that Baba said that Saint Teresa was one of his 4 favorite saints, along with Francis of Assisi, Catherine of Siena, and Saint Augustine. And Baba said he was so happy in Avila, that Avila reminded him very much of India, and also made a reference to the fact, he said, I have been here before, right? Many lifetimes ago, I've been here in Avila. So I'm jumping forward in time here from 1933, after Baba himself had been in Avila, to 1958, May 1958, and this was a day in the barn. And if you look at this picture at the very far right under the window, that's Charles in his white shirt. And then the white scarf right below Charles's arm, that's the head of his mother, Jane. And in the barn, Baba wanted to know, how many of you have heard of Saint Teresa of Avila? And some hands went up. Well, what do you know about her? And people talked about her books and about her founding of convents, her reform of the Carmelite order. And Baba said, yes, all that is true. That's right. But the most important thing was her incredibly deep love for Jesus Christ. And for me as the avatar, the depth of her love. And Jane said that as soon as she heard that, as soon as she heard about Saint Teresa's love for Christ, that she wanted to know everything about her. That she wanted to read her books, she wanted to read a biography of her. And fortunately, she became friends with Charles Purdom, Baba's longtime British disciple. And Purdom gave Jane his books of Saint Teresa. And they really bonded over her. So Purdom himself all these years had been interested in Teresa. And here, this is the copy of Saint Teresa's book, The Interior Castle, he gave to Jane, that he inscribed, to Jane, because of the blessed Saint Teresa, my saint, Charles. So Jane really, she embarked on a study of Saint Teresa, and it was not just an enthusiasm, but it was really her, almost in a kind of scholarly way, reading those books, reading commentaries on the books. She eventually, of course, went to Spain with Elizabeth Patterson, and they traveled around from convent to convent, beginning in Avila, and they went and they met nuns who are still living in the way that Saint Teresa prescribed way back in the 1500s. And Baba often blessed those trips. And there was one particular story that meant the most to Jane from the life of Saint Teresa. And it was the story of Saint Teresa's mystical marriage. So, Teresa had many visions of Christ during her lifetime that she wrote about. And one was when she underwent a mystical marriage to Christ, where Christ appeared to her, but instead of giving her a wedding ring, like he gave to Saint Catherine of Siena, he gave Teresa a nail, one of the nails of his crucifixion, and said, let this nail be a token, a marriage token, a betrothal token of you as my bride. And so Jane got very interested in this idea of bridal mysticism, which you see a lot in the writings of female saints of this period, but especially, of course, of Teresa's spiritual marriage. And she was influenced by that to begin thinking, to begin aspiring to have that kind of Saint Teresa role. What if I could be the bride of Christ? And it became her secret prayer. That she wrote it out. She would say it to herself. So here, addressing Baba, and she kept this in one of her Saint Teresa books. Charles and I found it. This is all, nothing matters. O beloved, do not be indifferent to me. O beloved, suffer me not to be separated from thee forever and ever. I would be thy bride. Thou art the Christ. So that became her prayer. And then one of the most pivotal moments of her life was when she felt that that prayer had been fulfilled. And it happened at the East-West Gathering in 1962. So she and Elizabeth and Charles and Wendy and John all went to Pune to Guru Prasad. So here's a picture. This is inscribed by Elizabeth to Jane. Darshan Pune Avatar Meher Baba, Jane Elizabeth in assembly one morning. And so what happened, one of the days of the East-West Gathering, there was a huge rainstorm. And people got drenched. And some of the Western women were invited to go back to where the women Mandali were. And Wendy and Jane included. And they got to go back and be with Mira and Mani. And Mira and Mani and the other women brought out dry clothes for the Westerners to wear. And so Jane was given this kind of yellow floral dress that had belonged to Mira. She wore that for the rest of the day. And at the end of the day, it was time for them to go home, to leave Guru Prasad and to go back to their hotel, the Turf Club in Pune. And so they went back to the women Mandali's quarters, and they were getting their, still damp clothes to take back. And Jane had, when it was time to go, Jane had left a scarf on one of the chairs. And right when they were leaving, Mira said, hold on. And Mira picked up the scarf and said, who does this scarf belong to? It doesn't belong here. And Jane was devastated at that moment because she had a lifelong problem with feeling insecure and unworthy. And she also had a lot of anxiety about being there at the East-West Gathering. So here she is with these longtime disciples of Baba who had known him since 1931, who had lived in India, Elizabeth and Kitty. And here she was, a relative newcomer. She had been with Baba just for, 4 years, since 1958, never lived with Baba. And so did she belong in this room full of all these amazing people, Mira and Mani and Kitty and Elizabeth? And it gave her another anxiety attack, and it made her feel like an outsider. And of course, Mira didn't mean it that way. Mira was just trying to match the person with the scarf, but Jane heard it almost as a kind of rebuke. And she went back to her room later. What happened on that same day when the scarf incident happened, there had been a wedding in Pune. And Baba had blessed the couple. And the couple had given, after the wedding, the couple had given Baba the wedding garland, which Baba wore around his neck, and also the bride's wedding bouquet. In the evening, when Jane is leaving Guru Prasad to go back to her hotel room, she hears these voices, and it's Baba's disciples, Adi and Minu, and they're rushing toward Jane with the bridal bouquet and the garland, the wedding garland. And they said, Baba wants you to have these. He wants you to take them to your room and keep them overnight. Which she did. And of course, she wrote a letter to Baba the next day, and she said, I know what you meant by sending me those things. My prayer had been fulfilled. You sent me the bridal bouquet and the wedding garland. And my prayer had been, if I could be thy bride. And that whole night, she said, that room became like my bridal chamber. And the smell of the jasmine, in the flowers filled the room. And it was this heavenly fragrance. And I felt your love so deeply. Isn't that so typical of Baba, where often there'll be these stories where there's some kind of rupture that ends up being an opening for people having a greater experience of Baba. I know Charles and I have experienced that in our lives. And that these things provide an opportunity for people to experience that Baba knows what's in their hearts, and then finds ways to let them know that he knows. So that's how Jane took the bridal episode. So these are just a few photos. Here, Jane seated next to Baba at the East-West gathering. And then here, she wanted to be photographed, of course, holding the wedding bouquet that Baba had sent to her. And she called this her bridal photo. And here's what she wrote on the back: November 8th, 1962. Beloved Baba sent garland and bouquet to my room at Turf Club, November the 7th evening. Isn't that beautiful? And this was something else she would write about often in her annotations to the writings of Saint Teresa. So here, this is an episode where Saint Teresa is having a dialogue with Christ, but look at what Jane wrote at the bottom. She refers to the East-West gathering, November the 4th, 1962. The beloved said, I love you. And then the page on the right, she refers to the wedding march, which was a song, from the wedding in Pune, the garland and bridal bouquet that Baba sent me November the 8th, 1962. So she always associated these things that she read about in Teresa with her own experience of Baba. That's how she framed it. Mani, of course, one of you mentioned Mani was her birthday sister. They shared a birthday, December 14th. And Mani was of all the Mandali, Mani was the person Jane was closest to. Yeah, she really regarded Mani as a sister. And they had lots of time together and a lot of correspondence. But this was a very special thing that Mani sent to Jane through Charles. This stone was picked up from ground trod by beloved Meher Baba when he was in Avila in October of 1933. It is sent through dear Charles to my sister Jane, for I know it belongs to her. And here, Jane and Mani. Jane told me this was her favorite picture of herself. They both look so happy there, don't they? And then Jane, this was the Jane that people saw at the center all those years. After she moved to Myrtle Beach from New York and took her family with her in 1965 to help Elizabeth and Kitty at the center. And all those decades, greeting guests, talking about Baba with both new people and people who are longtime Baba lovers. So here, Kitty, Elizabeth, and Jane. That's Buzz. See young Buzz way in the background. Jane and Elizabeth. That's such a familiar image, isn't it? Jane holding her cup of coffee in one hand, glasses in the other. Jane and Kitty. Jane is wearing her locket she always had. That's a picture of a Baba in 1933. That picture was of Baba in Genoa with Narina on one side and Enid Korf on the other, and Jane had cut out, so it's just Baba's face. And this is the private Jane, right? So the public Jane who was such a visible person, eventually not just becoming a collaborator with Elizabeth and Kitty, but being the director of the center for all those years. But she, as much as she loved being with people, which she did, she loved giving out to people, it was also a strain for her because she was more an introvert. And, I think in many ways, she would have enjoyed being a kind of hermit nun in her cell. That wasn't the role that was given to her. But she was very deliberate about spending time, setting aside time where she could pray and read and just have silent time. And so here she is. This is her bedroom at her studio where she lived during the last few years of her life, with the pictures of Mani and Mera on the table next to her chair. And here she's looking at correspondence from Mani. But, during these times, she would read and annotate Saint Teresa, Thomas Merton, whose writings she loved, Pope John the 23rd, his memoir. She loved that book. And Jane worked so hard at her spiritual life through this kind of contemplation and study. So here, this is a Christmas day, Charles and me with Jane.
Beautiful picture.
Thank you. Yeah, we were very happy. We had a lot of time together because there were a couple years when Charles and I lived in Mayer House and Jane was next door in the studio. And that was really a very, very special time. So I'll tell you something that happened during this period. We had obtained a series of videos from Spain that were the life of Saint Teresa. And they were acted out. It was based on historical reality, but there was an actress playing Saint Teresa, and Jane loved these videos. And we were watching them one night, and it was time for her to go home. So I was walking her out of Mayer House. We were walking to her studio, and at the front door, she stopped and turned and looked at me right in the eye and said, I remember it sometimes. I remember being there in the time of Saint Teresa with you and Charles and Wendy. So Jane was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the summer of 1996, and she underwent surgery in August of that summer, which ended up not giving her very much time. She passed away just a few months after that, April the 11th. But this is Jane in her hospital room at MUSC in Charleston. And the hospital folks were very kind, where they gave her a room that had this kind of adjoining room that was like a guest room. And Charles and Wendy and I took turns sleeping in that guest room, so that one of us was always there with her while she was in her hospital bed. And what you see here, Jane, you can see how she looks kind of yellowish here. She was jaundiced from the pancreatic cancer. She's ringing a bell. Wait, I have to show you. Hold on just a second. This bell, it's a special bell because it's the bell that Elizabeth had at Yupon Dunes that Baba would use when he wanted something, right? So she wanted to have the bell with her in Charleston. And there was one night that was very important to me. Charles and Wendy had gone out to dinner in Charleston. And so I was the person who was on duty. I was there with Jane. And it was pretty late at night. And she and I were talking various things about her, her thoughts about Baba and Mani and Mara. And I was thinking about how much I loved her and wanted to have not only lots of years with her in this lifetime, but I wanted to have future lifetimes with her. And I started to have my own anxiety attack, which is that Jane, is so much better than me that she's going to get done with the reincarnation process a long time earlier than I will, and we won't get that much time together. And so I tried to get her to make a promise that night. I said, Jane, can you promise that you won't finish with all your lifetimes until I do, so that we can have lots of lifetimes together? And she smiled. She says, well, dear, I don't know if I can promise that. But then she said, but I think we'll be together again. We'll be together with Baba next time he comes. And that meant everything to me. And I have a prayer that I say every day that's based on that.
That's precious.
Beautiful, beautiful photo.
I'll tell you one last thing that I'll stop. But when Jane came back home from the hospital, she had several months at home. Her cancer had come back by Christmas of 1996, despite the surgery. And Wendy and I especially were there a lot, taking care of her. And when she passed away in April, do you all remember how in 1997 there was that comet that came through? It was called something like, was it called something like the Haley-Bopp comet? I can't remember what it was called.
Yes.
But it became most visible in the days just before Jane died. And I remember one night walking to her studio. I think it was like 2 nights before she died, and that comet was so apparent in the sky. It was the first time I had seen it. I had heard reports of it, but it was like right there. And I've always associated that with Jane's passing, seeing the comet, almost like it was a marker of her death. And then, I read later, when I was reading accounts by Saint Teresa's nuns of Saint Teresa's death, they said, one unusual thing that happened is that a new star appeared in the sky when Teresa died.
Oh.
We saw it through the windows of her cell. Yeah.
Oh.
But like I say, I still feel her here every day. And sometimes I go back. We have a big box of correspondence that people sent after she passed away. And so many people talked about their experience of Jane, often how they had gone to her during a period of crisis in their lives and how she had said just the right thing to make them feel better, where it was something like a divorce or a job change, or how sweet she was to their children. She always had very special fondness for children and would give them little toys when they would come over, and just how many lives she touched. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for letting me share. It's been a joy, and it makes me think of one last thing about Saint Teresa. What I feel as I'm saying all these things is one of the things Saint Teresa loved to repeat again and again was a passage from Psalms. I will sing the mercies of the Lord forever. That's how I feel. I will sing the mercies of the Lord forever for things like this amazing friendship with Jane, and of course my marriage to Charles, and my sister Wendy, my brother Buzz, and all of you. Thank you, Jay Bob.
How lovely, Christopher. Thank you so much. This was, we didn't know whether to ask you to talk about Saint Teresa, and you did, and it fit all beautifully. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That was so precious, so heartful. Thank you for sharing. Really, what a gift.
Thank you so much.
Giving us a window on your life there with Jane and Charles, all of it. How in the family you are definitely that part of that family. Well, folks in the audience, at this time we'd like to ask if you have questions or stories to share. Please just raise your hands. Yeah, please raise your hands and we'll call on you. Sorry, turning down a heater. Oh, here we go, Ruthie.
Jay Baba, I just wanted to share this photo of Jane and Monty and some of the other women. She sent this to me. I don't even remember the date, but she said that this also was one of her favorite photos. Get the glare off of it. Yeah, you can see Jane and Monty kind of in the middle.
That is so beautiful, Ruthie. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, she said it was one of her favorites, and I can't remember, it was a letter from Jane, and she sent this picture along with it. I don't even know if there's a date on the back.
Ruthie, can you put it up again, please?
Yes,
Thanks.
I'm just
Maybe spotlight it.
It is spotlighted, dear. Now, there we go.
Oh,
Sorry.
there. Oh, in India.
Yeah, look at the
Jane,
sisters,
big smile,
sisters in the middle. Yeah.
big smile on Jane's face.
Right,
Beautiful.
the sisters in the middle, and
Are
then
they singing?
they look like they are.
You.
Yeah, the two sisters in the middle, and then the two sisters at the edge, Katie and Go Ahead.
So iconic. All those beautiful women. Wow. Mm.
So, yeah, that was a very sweet thing she sent me, and said it was one of her favorite photos of.
Very beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what's there to say about Jane? She, as Christopher so beautifully put, she just held the most important part in my life at the center. There are many wonderful people that I met when I first went, but she was something I had never seen before. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I went down to the gateway because that's where she was working, and she wanted to talk to me, and could I come by there? So I went to the gateway, and when I went in, she was on the phone. She motioned me in to sit down. I sat down, and she was very focused on what she was talking about to this person on the phone. And she was so alive. And I just watched her as she focused on what they were talking about and what her part in it or whatever. And then she said goodbye, and she hung up, and she turned to me, and all of her focus was straight on me. And as Christopher said, she put me at ease because she started asking about me and what I did in life, and if I liked what I was doing, and how I heard about Baba, and so on. So I could relax and talk, but her focus was so razor sharp. And it wasn't just this kind of focus, but it was the heart focus as well. So I just felt this incredible desire to have that quality, to be able to do that. So that's what I remember.
That's so
Thank you.
beautiful.
You're good too. I'll tell my story. We had an intense connection with Jane, totally unexpected. Our family has only ever been to Myrtle Beach, to the center, once. And that was it was when Kitty was 99 years old, August. And I was there with my husband and 1, 2, 3, 4 of our 5 kids. And a few other friends. It was a big venture. A couple of us went from out west here. We all flew together, and Jane was the person you would go to see. I was either Jane or Kitty, so we got to go see Jane, and we walked in, and it was very. The word elegant comes to mind. Her living room was lovely, and she was just so gracious, and so she asked a little bit about us, and then for some reason she how did it go, she started talking about her own life in details that were and very intimately. Right away she talked about she had a daughter who was taken from her by her father at age 2. Details that you would not expect that this kind of sharing would happen to someone that we had only just met. And she told about how painful that was to her. She had her daughter, she didn't see her daughter again until she was in her late teens. And so she stopped and she said, I don't know why I'm telling you this. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, I do, Jane. I said, these children have just lost their mother. They're my stepkids. So, Oh, and my goodness, the floodgates opened and she shepherded our family for the whole, I don't know, week and a half, as long as we were there. She was like our mother. She made sure we had the front seats at any assembly. We had a teenage daughter, and her grandson Mark was there, and she thought surely they might make a match. She just matched kind of. She just totally took took charge of us. Oh, and oh, I remember my our he was 12, the one the jock in our family, a real wonderful Gary is his name, our son Gary. um he I'll never forget the sight of him laying down petting the cat BB and just weeping. He was crying, and oh, it was an amazing event. I don't know if we've ever been able to convey to Charles how profound this was. So we, as I said, she just took, she was our spiritual mama, I would say, for the week. We um she talked to the kids about, she knew how hard that was uh, to lose their mom. These now are my stepkids who by then were living with us. And I remember we left. She gave us each. She wrote a little lammy card for each one of us with a message for each one of us. And when almost as we were leaving, Gary, he's such a heartfelt kid. He had to buy a present for her. So he went to, it was a little plant, and it was late, and you had to catch a plane, but he had to leave this little plant for Jane. But, I'm sure there are more details that I'll never forget what an event that was. It was, yeah.
Eddie, since you said that Charles has never heard that, I'll make sure that he does. That's so amazing.
I feel like I've never really conveyed how intense and profound an experience that was. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
Oh, hi. Unfortunately, I got here later, so I'll watch the beginning later. I adored Jane, and I guess my relationship started with her, with Buzz and Wendy in Washington, D.C., because we were in the same group, and we would see each other on a weekly basis, and it was very hard. I really hated it when Buzz and Wendy left, because I especially had a close relationship with Wendy. I shared an interest in theater, though I didn't do what Wendy did, I just loved her so much. I still do, of course. And then I got to the center the first time, probably, I think I met Jane on my first trip in 1985. And I had just been to my first Baba meetings probably a few months before, maybe February or January. And you got me crying, Betty, when you were telling your story about Jane's ability to embrace you. Well, she did the same thing with me. I remember sitting in her office and talking with her for a long time about some very traumatic things that had happened in my life, probably at least 3. They were very traumatic. And one included a loss of a mother, loss of a brother, the loss of a half sister. And she suggested, and she opened the door. I'm thinking Buzz's song about opening the door. She opened the door and she said, "You should write to Mara." So I did. I wrote a 17-page letter to poor Mara. And I got an answer later, but and the answer was really important to me. I still have the letter hidden away someplace. It was short. It was a page and a half. And anyway, I just adored Jane. And I didn't get to see her towards the end because I was in San Antonio, Texas. I moved there in 92. So I didn't get to the center while I was in Texas, which is probably why I had to come back to this area. Okay, that's all I wanted to share. Che Baba.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Baba, thank you.
What a big heart she, what a big effect she's had on many of us, I'm sure. Joy?
Hi, oh, hi, can you hear me okay?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Baba took some years of getting me in his net. And when I moved to Chicago, I had been in Australia. I found a Baba group there because by that time I knew he was important. Well, I had had 3 experiences and I decided this is it, you know, I'm his. And I started finding a Baba group in Chicago, and then I started going to Myrtle Beach. And I sort of identified with some of the things that Christopher said about being anxious and nervous and stuff, and having lots of things in my life that didn't work out. So I would go to Myrtle Beach, and I was in nursing school at the time. I had done a lot of growth work and only held temp jobs till I decided to go to school. And I think it was in Jane's house. They told me to go see Jane Haynes, you know, and it was in the deep dark of winter, and it was all gray, and it seemed like nobody was at the center, and I was there by myself. And when I got into her presence, I just felt so at home and so much love coming from her. And as you guys shared, so much interest in me, you know. And it's sort of like just has stuck with me all these years, my experience sitting there with Jane. And she was asking about what I was doing, and what stuck out in my mind at the time was, she said, "What are you doing, dear?" or something in your life. And I said, "Well, I'm going to nursing school." And I was like over 40, and I started going to nursing school. She said, "Oh, Baba loved nurses." And I got all puffed up, you know, and felt so happy, and everything was light and airy after that. Of course, in the remaining years, I think, oh, she probably said that to everybody. Baba loved engineers, or Baba loved secretaries. But it gave me such a good feeling. Like, wow, Baba loved nurses. So I never read that anywhere, but Jane told me that. And whether or not it, you know, but it was the right thing to say to me, I think. You know, it was just so spontaneous, and it just felt like, oh, that's so nice to hear. Feeling so alone at the center, and going every year in the winter by myself. And she was just a joy to be around. So easy and friendly and kind. And so that's why I'm here today, just to share that, and to hear more from other people, and to hear from you, Christopher. Thank you so much. I just really loved her. She was so easy to love. Thank you, guys.
I think, Joy, I love that story. But I think one of the reasons she was so easy to love is because I think it was easy to sense that she was such a relatable person because of these very things that we're talking about, that there was something fragile about her. And I think came across with somebody like Kitty or Monty. You know, it's hard to imagine them ever really having much struggle because they were so, everything was so, just seemed so secure and confident. But with Jane, I feel like I've noticed people often say that with Jane, there was something that they connected with her about on a very human level, like they shared her experience, like that beautiful story, Betty, about Diana being taken away from her. And that with her, there was always this kind of three-dimensionality about her own struggles, insecurities, and that created a very different kind of track than some of the other people who had been with Baba. So I know exactly what you mean.
One comment I have, I had this sense she was director of the center at the time we were there. And I got the sense that was, she wanted so hard to do it well. Of course, it meant everything to her, but what a burden isn't quite the right word. You just had the sense that it was definitely hard, that I think she might have just preferred to step back and, as you say, be an introvert and read in her little chamber there. But she had this responsibility, and I remember, there was a person at the gateway. We were talking, and she said, the the orders would come from Jane, and she said, I got to the point where I date and timed each one, because Jane maybe would change her mind or something would change. And poor Jane, I just got this sense of, oh my, what a responsibility that was. So
Huge. And sometimes I think the strain would show. I mean, she really believed Baba had, of course, had put her in that role, but it was a strain. It was exhausting. She worked a lot and would wake up early, in the middle of the night and think of something she needed to do for the center and then write it out. But one other thing about Jane that I think was so important, I heard someone mention Happy Club before I started talking, is that she was also so devoted to service outside the boundaries of the center, and was very focused, especially on the community and race path, and was often spearheading something, some kind of initiative, a fundraising initiative. She called it Phoenix Renaissance in the last years of her life, and holding auctions and that she would then donate to the community, bringing the Happy Clubbers to the center. And she always really felt that, of course, the main purpose of the center is to be a retreat for people to come and experience Baba. But she definitely felt that the center also needed to be joined to service in the larger community.
Yeah, I'll never forget the image of her sitting and praying with these. It was Grace, and it was it's as if the kids had a natural sense that she was a special lady, and they were good. They were being very good to sit and say their little, grace before. I think Jeff was going to take them to the beach or something, but they honored her, I would say.
Can I ask 2 questions? I came on screen because I was hoping to take advantage of having Christopher on his own. And it may not be the right time, it may be inappropriate, but you know me. So Christopher, first of all, I want to acknowledge your role in making Charles so available to us, because I know you're in the background supporting him, taking care of him, loving him as we do. So I want to acknowledge that, because I do. And I love that. I also have 2 questions. The first question is, what is it like to be Charles' partner in this whole Baba arena of love, adoration, anger, upsetness, devotion? And the second question, what was Jane's response to the horrible mess that happened in the hearts of all of us between Charles and you and whoever?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you, Marta, for what you said about me supporting Charles. And thank you. That means a lot. As far as being Charles's partner and then husband as of 2014, for the first few years, there were challenges to it because we would go to a lot of gatherings and I didn't know a lot of people. And so I couldn't quite figure out, what do I do when people want to have their own private meetings with Charles? Like, who do I go talk to? And I'm kind of on the periphery. And so, that changed gradually as I got to know more people in the Baba community, but it was kind of awkward at first. But then what happened, so what Marta is referring to is in 1994, Charles and I both felt that we needed to move to the center to help Jane. And Charles at that time was vice president of the center. Jane was president. And she felt like the time had come where she wanted to turn some things over to Charles. And she wanted to be free to have more of this kind of contemplative life. And she loved going to Mepkin Abbey, the Trappist monastery in the low country of South Carolina. And she wanted to be able to do more things like that and to not have these day-to-day responsibilities at the center. So Charles and I decided the time was right. We're going to move down there in 1994. And many, many people welcomed us with open arms when we moved into Jane's house, Mayor House. Jane built a little studio next door, just a little tiny 2-room structure that she lived in, so Charles and I could be in Mayor House. And we were really excited about this move and pictured ourselves being there for the rest of our lives. But then what happened was there was a small group of people who objected to a gay couple living in Mayor House and felt that it would be dangerous for the center to have a gay couple in that role, that and the objections really came on 2 grounds. One is that there were people who felt like it was a kind of violation of Baba and the discourses, gay couple. Well, that goes against Baba. And so, that Charles is not spiritually refined because of his relationship with me. So there was that whole track. And then the other whole track was this would be an embarrassment for the center in conservative South Carolina, and that would work against the well-being of the center. It was a small group, I have to say, but they were very vocal. And some kind of ugly things happened, like them trying to get the Mondali involved. And one very painful thing for us was that they did get Meru involved. And that was devastating. Meru sent a letter to Jane, saying basically that by Jane allowing Charles and me to be there, that we were putting Baba's presence at the center at risk. So she really believed that. On the other hand, we got enormous support from Mani and Erich, which meant everything. And Mani wrote, and she said she thought it was absolutely necessary for Charles to be there. Mani treated Charles and I as a couple when we had gone to India in 1993, was incredibly kind and solicitous with me. I mean, she wanted Charles to know that she honored us as a couple, and so did Erich. And they gave us a lot of very special times with them, and then sent us messages and Jane messages that they were with us during this whole time. And honestly, Mani was shocked by what happened. Jane went to India before she became ill and had long talks with Mani about it. And it was really hard for Mani, because Jane was also pulled into it, because one of the things that kind of gained momentum is that Jane, that her studio that she built, so Charles and I could live at Mayor House, her studio had like encroached on one of the boundaries of the center. And so that turned to this whole thing about, oh, Jane has seized center land and she needs to be evicted from this building. We're going to knock it. So it just got ugly. It just got really ugly, and turned into this hostility to all 3 of us, which actually ended up bringing all three of us really close. And like that was one of those moments I'm talking about, like Jane with the scarf. That was one of those moments where something really hard and painful turned out to give all 3 of us such a deeper experience of Baba. And so Charles and I feel blessed that happened. And of course, we went on to have very happy life away from the center, still being involved in the life of the center. And of course, Charles still being very active, giving talks, but, a different life than we'd envisioned. But, this is what Baba wanted for us. Yeah. So it's all good. It's all, Charles's favorite quote of Baba's is, every moment I respond to the whole of creation, my response being divine is wholly from love. And all these things that happen, they are Baba's response from love to bring us closer to him.
You know, too, Christopher, it's such an example to all of us and all of us to come in the future. The way that you and Charles have held us has just been an inspiration, an inspiration. And again, there's no gratitude that I can express to you. And thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
That's very kind. That touches my heart, Marta. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you. Thank you, Marta, for asking the question. Of course, all of us were affected deeply at the time. Ruthie's had a question for a while now.
I just wanted to reel back to Happy Club. And I think that's really the first place that I met Jane. I think my memory is that she was down at the boathouse with the Happy Club kids. And so I arrived on a Saturday and I saw them down. So I went down, and I think that's where I started talking to Jane. And yeah, she did feel that I think she also loved nurses. I told her that I was a nurse. I heard about Mayor Baba from the Rolling Stone cover, but I was working as a nurse at a heroin clinic taking care of heroin addicts. And so one of them brought the magazine, and there was Baba on the cover of the Rolling Stone. And then he left, and I read the article, and then the rest is history. But it was really, I always felt something incredible in this house, this big old house in the ghetto in Pittsburgh. I felt something incredibly spiritual there. And that's my first vision of Baba was in that house. I saw his photo the first time as the nurse there. And so when I told her what I was doing, she asked what I was doing, and I told her, she burst into tears. And she said something about Baba, you know, that was like a main thing that Baba wanted people to work with. The issue, I think, of addiction. Only she said it differently, and Joy, just like you said, it just made my day. It made me feel like, I'm on the right path. And as I said, just being at the clinic always had a deep spiritual impact on me for some reason. So I told a few people there about Mayor Baba, and I know two of the young men drove down to the center and got to stay on center. So it just was curious how she's supported us all in what our endeavors were, but she just burst into tears. Thanks.
And with all these things, these are such great stories, but they show how Jane took such a sincere and active interest in other people, which was so genuine. It wasn't just because she was in the role of greeting people. She really wanted to know. And she loved connecting with people's hearts in that way and offering what encouragement she could. Yeah, that's beautiful, Ruthie.
Thanks, Ruthie. Let's see. Mikal hasn't yet asked a question. I'll get to you, Elizabeth.
That's not a question. First of all, I was really moved by what you, by your story, and by the great love, and the beautiful relationship that you share. And what I love also is that, some of us are connected to Baba, but some of us are also connected to another person who is connected to Baba. And how important, when you are so closely connected, how important a relationship it is. And you have described this beauty that is so beautiful from your heart. It's just so moving. So really thank you for your share and your very close and intimate and loving share. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that I don't think that Baba is the instigator of wrongdoings. I am living in a country where it's happening a lot. And no, I don't think he is the instigator of these. What I think about Baba is that when these things are handed to him, then he minimizes the pain and the suffering that can happen from them. And he turns the things to the best ability, to the best that it can be. So he minimizes the thing, and then he turns it into the best vehicle that he can for us. So I was in Myrtle Beach only once. That was right in this month, right at the day that Kitty Davy passed away. I mean, I came on the 2nd of December, and Kitty Davy passed between the 2nd and the 3rd. And so Jane Haynes had to take into her, she was alone, right? She had to take the whole thing on her shoulders. So it was a very, very moving time for me. It's very special, and very special connection to Kitty, actually, though I never met her face to face. Because I felt that she waited. And when she knew that I came, she just left the body. I felt that very strongly. And I really thank her for it. And so Jane, I met her once. At that time, I came into the room, and she was sitting in a chair, and she was the most beautiful being. She was so gracious and so elegant and so beautiful. Very, very beautiful and majestic. And we had time together. The whole time was mostly around Kitty Davy, of course, and Jane did not have much time for anything, but I did have this special meeting with her. And then later on, when the thing happened, blew up in the center. Being in Israel is really being in the outposts of the Baba world. You don't hear anything, you don't have any connection, you don't have any sahabat, you don't have any mandali. But I don't know how this story got to me. And I immediately wrote back that no one can take you out of Myrtle Beach. No one. Your souls, your childhood, your life is there vibrating with the trees. And no one can take that out. No one can chase that away. And so, yes, the whole center is drenched with those first people who were there and managed it. And you are, Jane's family, are completely a part of it, and completely, fully vibrating all the time there. So, so that is what I think. So maybe it's good that you didn't have to carry this center on your shoulders, although Wendy and Baz have to do it now. And Charles is doing, and so are you, and supporting him. And thank you for all the talks and all the beauty that you bring. And thank you for this beautiful heart share. Thank you, Jay Baba.
That's so beautiful, Jay Baba. Thank you for every single word. And one of the things you said about suffering and how Baba tempers the suffering, that's something that Charles talks about a lot, that Elizabeth said, that she told him that, yeah, Baba does not take away our suffering. He doesn't, but he finds ways to make it manageable, right?
Yeah. And I don't even think that he's the one who's giving that suffering. You see, I don't think the the Master's Prayer, uh, um, the Repentance Prayer, and all these are showing quite a different picture that Baba wants to have in the world, that he wants us to behave and how he wants us to be. And if he would have put all these troubles in the world, he wouldn't give us the repentance prayer to ask him to repent. So he is given this repentance prayer not because he is doing it. If he was doing it, he would have to repent to do the repentance prayer. It's we who have to do the repentance prayer because we are not doing what he wants. So, this is how I see things. I don't see what is happening, not in this country, not in Ukraine, not in the world, and not what happened in this case of Jane and you all. I don't see it as part of Baba's wish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, you've got more to say.
Well, I just want to say two things. One is Jane really was such a gorgeous person inside and out, and she had the most beautiful smile. And one of the pictures that was shown, you can see that in the hospital room. That was a beautiful picture of her. But I also wanted to say something about Christopher. So I met Christopher many, many years ago when I came to the center and had a splitting headache. And this young guy, this is when he probably first started working there, came to the center, and I he was a cabin helper, and he asked me, I told him what was wrong, that I needed an aspirin or something. And so he went to get it. But not only did he get it, he came back with a yellow rose, and then the 2 aspirin and a glass of orange juice. I mean, and when I saw him, he must have been, I don't know, somewhere between 18 and 22. He was really young. And he himself was beautiful like an angel, with this curly blonde hair and big blue eyes, and and this beautiful, I could not believe he brought me a rose and orange juice. And anyway, I just want to, that always impressed me from the beginning. And later he joined the family of the Haynes and Charles and Jane and all that. I mean, he may have already been involved, I don't know, but I just wanted to say that about Christopher. And thank you so much back then and for now, and for taking care of Charles. And wonderful that you had such a close relationship and special relationship to Jane. Jai Baba.
Oh, Jay Bob, it makes me so happy about the aspirin and the rose.
I'll never, ever forget that, Christopher. You made a big impact on my life with that one rose and the glass of orange juice.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
I don't know if you remember it, but I remember it.
I do remember that. I love being reminded of it too. Yeah, there was a couple of years there when I was volunteering at the center, and it was wonderful. But there was one time where I got a rebuke from Jane, which was withering, and it was because I had mopped the floor in the original kitchen, and Phyllis Ott happened to be there, and Phyllis called Jane to say, Christopher mopped the floor and he left standing water on the floor. And I got the phone rang in the original kitchen. It was Jane. And she said, you have to dry up this water. She said, well, one thing Elizabeth told me is you never leave standing water on a floor. So Phyllis got me into trouble. Oh, well.
Oh.
It's fine. It was fine.
Christopher, I'm reminded of a time at LA Sahabas when Charles was out talking to us before I knew anything about you. And the way he introduced you, or how this is early 90s maybe, or the 80s, was so unique and beautiful. How did, gay marriage was not, so much a thing back then. And it's not an engagement party you announced. Charles brought a beautiful album that you had created for him. Beautiful, with quotes, Saint Teresa of Avila. It just reflected your beautiful personality. And his way of saying, see, this is my this is Christopher. You weren't there. So we passed around this incredible, I'm thinking, Charles, what were you thinking that you passed that around to 80 people? It was exquisite. And this is how we got to know about you. This was Charles's way of saying, I have found my true love, and I want you to know. It was so lovely. And furthermore, I think you two have just broken new ground. What a challenge. And if anybody could do it, you two could. You kind of showed the way for gay couples. It was just, things are different now, and Baba is totally there and totally behind all of this new way. So that's all I wanted to say.
Things are so different. When I was growing up in South Carolina, I could never have envisioned how different it would be. But I love that about the photo album. Yes, I made that for Charles's birthday one year with lots of pictures of Baba and quotes. Oh, that's so great. I didn't know he passed it around, but that's wonderful. I'm glad he shared it.
And it was more than photos. It was lovely little artistic kind. It was beautiful. It was just beautiful.
I had fun making it.
Anybody else? Looks like maybe oh, there we go. Sharon.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that Christopher, you shared the story, because I first went to the center when Jane was the one that I was designated to be interviewed by her. It was my first time there. I believe it was in the late 1980s. I've only been there twice. The second time was when Irwin Luck's film premiered there. That's another story. But so Jane, I felt a little intimidated because she wanted to know, well, for 3 years, I'd kind of hung around the Baba group in Cambridge, Massachusetts, because I lived in Somerville. And I would go to the meetings at the divinity school, and I would feel like a fake because I would see this kind of bright-eyed in everybody's face, and I wasn't sure Baba was the avatar, but she wanted to know, when did you know and when did you come to Baba? But it was in the Northeast Gathering at Rhinebeck, upstate New York in 1986. And she really wanted specifics, and I found it hard to verbalize. I said I felt as if I was pierced in my heart. And I think she said something like Jesus. So I said yes, but I was a little vague because I was raised in a Jewish faith, but I always from childhood had a strong Christian connection, but from the heart, not from a specific religion necessarily. And Jane was busy. It was a longer interview than we had expected. And while I was just finishing up, Ron and Lisa Greenstein burst into the room without really being told they could come in with this picture of Christ being pierced by an arrow. And they wanted to say, they said, Jane, we just had to show this to you. So that's my story. And this meeting today, hearing Christopher's connection with Jane and Jane's connection with Saint Teresa has been life-changing for me. Thank you, Jay Baba.
What an amazing, amazing story, Sharon, about the piercing of the heart. Oh, wow. So typical of Baba, isn't it? So beautiful.
Teresa of Avila was also pierced in the heart, was she not? Yeah, that was one.
Yes, you see that a lot in art where an angel is piercing her.
Yeah.
in the
Mhm.
heart. She said it filled her with great pain, but also great love of God.
Yeah, the sweetness and the pain together.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
sure. I love that story.
Hmm.
I'm glad this is being recorded because Charles is going to want to hear all these stories.
I have a little video. If there aren't any more hands that raise, I'll be happy to show it. It's not very long, but it's just some photos of Jane and some music in the background. So
Let's see.
when
You co-host. Sure, I don't see any hands.
I don't want to rush everybody, but I'm
There was
just
one, I will say, there's one little, Mikal, I remember just a little story about you and Kitty, you in the guest house. Do I have it right? That you had an experience? I wonder, do you feel comfortable sharing it or?
Is it time because we're talking about Jane, you know? So,
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
so,
Alright.
yeah,
I'll grab you. I'll get you another time. Okay.
yeah.
And that, yeah, let's see let's
And
see.
Ruthie has those wonderful videos. Wow.
oh, you're so kind. Here we go. We'll see. It's lovely to get to look at Jane so much. So, Christopher, thank you for everything and those beautiful photos you brought today.
Thank you so much.
And the heart, so much heart, really. Wow.
This world is filled with fire and fury. Storms of ages roar. But there's a mystery behind the story. The heart cannot ignore. My world's been broken by you, and I've gone under. What else can I do? Oh, surrender. There was once a field of my own planting, ready to be reaped. But now that garden so enchanting has become ashes at your feet. Should I be running from you? I have no answers. What else can I do? Oh, surrender. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. If the hopes and schemes of my imagination had all come true, would I be even one step closer to the sight of you. You tear down the false around you, so truth can be heard. What else can I do? Oh, surrender. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. And he comes to turn the heat up higher, though the journey may be far. We have the chance to dance in the fire of the avatar. You take the pain of the world upon you for just one word. What else can I do? Oh, surrender. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. You take the pain of the world upon you for just one word. What else can we do? Oh, surrender. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over. I must do my best to lay it down and let my Father take over.
Beautiful.
Stunning, Ruthie. Oh, what a treasure. All those photos. Wow.
That was fantastic, Ruthie.
You're muted. You're muted.
Ruthie?
Thank you. Thank you. The subject matter made it just so easy, and the beautiful song said it all. So, I mean, what can you do? Gee, well.
That was gorgeous, Ruthie. Did you put that together? Oh my goodness, just amazing. All those different images of Jane and, you know, from youth to, you know, the very end. It was just gorgeous. I love the one of her praying, you know, in the woods. That was so, you know, you capture, and then holding the baby and with the children, and breaks your heart, you know, so beautiful. Just gorgeous.
And also
Wasn't that
the,
with Bob Brown? One with Bob Brown?
There was, I think Bob was in one of them.
It looks like maybe after he'd gotten sick. You know,
Yeah.
she had her arm around him, you know. Anyway, beautiful. Thank you.
and
Great
also the
subject.
one in the dress that she was wearing, that you said that you got when after the rain was, and Baba is hugging her with so much love. Oh wow, what a beauty! Wow.
Flower dress. Yeah, I noticed that too.
But the hug, you know, the hug, and Baba all there, you know, and she's all there.
Well, I think there might have been, and Christopher, you can clarify, but was there a little confusion at that photo, whether that was people
Oh,
thought it was
Wendy.
Wendy and then
Oh,
Yes. For years, we all thought it was windy, and then we realized certain visuals in the photo made it. Of course, it was Jane. She was wearing the dress, and it just so happened that the yellow dress ended up being very important because at the East-West gathering that day, there was something that Baba was doing where he had people come up on the stage to wear, who are different colors of a rainbow or different colors of his flag, and he needed someone yellow. And she happened to have on the yellow dress, so she got to come up there.
Oh, that's a neat story.
I wonder what yellow means. Did Baba say?
I don't know. To find out. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if Michal was talking about the hug where Baba is kissing her, but
and
that
she's
was
kissing
amazing.
him. Yeah, and she's kissing him. They're both in this love hug. Wow.
And the other thing is how gorgeous she is. Those early pictures of her, I mean, she just looks like a movie star. The one with her eyes raised, I mean, just like drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah, she was.
Ralph, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, you were mentioning Bob Brown. I always felt ill at ease with around. I adored Jane, but when it came toe to toe, one on one, I felt very anxious. I just, I was ready to crawl out of my skin, and glad when it was over. But Bob, who was my best friend for many years, at least up until he married, and even sometimes after, for a while after his marriage, took him a while to get married after being married. Bob could not pass within the notion or idea of Jane's presence without running. He'd go over to the house if we were on the center for a hug. And he would, it was a thing for him to feel Jane's love. He said, I feel so much, I can't. I get such a charge from Jane. I feel Baba's love so much, so deeply. And I love to get her hugs. And he'd say that to me, and I'd listen to it and admire it and appreciate it. And I could see it, you know. And yeah, it'd say, don't you feel that? I said, I do, but I didn't say anything more because I felt like it would dampen his spirit. If I were, it's not negative, it's just me, you know. But Bob was, he adored Jane. He couldn't get enough of her. And I
Thanks.
thought that was great. I thought it was so wonderful. So many people, everyone loved loved loving Jane. And she did. I could feel her love when she embraced others, when she would be with others, and she had so much love. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful love. It really was.
Ralph, there are not many people around who were there as long as you ago as you. You're
Yeah.
you're here to tell the story.
Thank you, Ralph.
Well, Christopher, this is just, I knew it was going to be great, and it really has been. Boy, such a nice time.
Thank you so much. I just love being with you all. Thank you.
And please tell Christopher we missed, tell Charles we missed him.
I will. I will.
I missed him. I wanted him here.
Me too.
Oh,
Invite him again for something soon.
Well, you know, Betty has brought up, I'm sorry, Betty has brought up the idea that maybe you would be willing to do something to kind of give us a little introduction to Saint Teresa Avila. Maybe just, you know, something for like an hour and just give us some information.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Betty
Absolutely.
thought of it.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
okay. There's more then, because I feel like you really gave, you know, a good introduction, but yeah, okay. Right, you're
He's
by
on.
the way, Joe DeSabatino has a lot to say about the artwork with the piercing and the agony and the ecstasy. He did that in one of the art appreciation classes. So if you have something like that, it would be good if Joe came as well.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what he talked about.
Christopher, I'm glad that Charles is not here. We get you all to ourselves, and you get to be you know,
Oh, thank you.
for yourself,
Right.
by yourself. So thank you, and I have to go. So thank you very much.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Baba.
You are
Baba.
the wind beneath his wings, Christopher.
Thank you.
How about a moment of silence together?
Let's do. Thank you, Ruthie.
Jai Baba.
What a delicious time. Thank you so much.
Jai Baba. Thank you.
Bob, everybody. Jay Baba, Christopher.
Jai Baba. Thank you so much.
All right, here we go. Stop.